Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing on this great day? Everybody doing well? Good, good. I want to welcome you to our March 22nd, 2022 weekly briefing. And today we will begin where we begin most of our weekly briefings. We'll begin with an update on COVID-19. According to the Virginia Department of Health, the city of Richmond has seen 44,040 cases of COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic, roughly 2 years ago. And the health department has stated that we've seen a decline in our 7-day average of new daily cases, which stands at 13.1. Now, per our custom here, I'd like to take a moment of silence, pause for a few moments to remember the 482 members of our community that we've lost over the course of this pandemic over the last 2 years. Thank you. And I'd also like to be a broken record about this, that remind folks that our best protection from serious illness and from hospitalization is and remains getting vaccinated. So, if you are not vaccinated and boosted, there are some vaccination and testing opportunities available to you. As always, please go to www.vax.rchd.com or continue to call our hotline at 804-205-3501. Now, as we see our COVID numbers continue to decrease, we have waived mask wearing here in city-owned buildings, places like City Hall. And to that end, I also want to debunk the misconception that our parks and community centers are not open. Our community centers are open for structured and unstructured programming, such as Open Gym. Here to tell us a little bit more about what our community centers are up to is my good friend Chris Frelke, the Departments of Parks and Recreation, their director. Chris?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I've actually brought some more of my team here to sort of share all the different things that we do have going on in the city. As the mayor alluded, we are open back up, and we have lots of programs, structured and unstructured, for our community. First of all, we will be starting our tennis, soccer, baseball, and yes, CarMax Outdoor Summer League will be back this summer. In addition, we'll be working with CarMax to be doing a summer camp for the first time with kids ages 8 to 11. That program will be starting July 19th, and then we'll be working with the older teenage groups 12th through 14th, August 7th through the 5th. So those are some of the new things that we have sports-wise that are opening back up. We also will have our pools open. Hopefully we will not need to jump into the pool again. All right, well, we will be doing that to try to get some more lifeguards. We are always in need.
Full suit.
So, and we're excited about the mayor's proposed budget of raising our starting salaries to $17 an hour. That will be huge in trying to get us to help attract the talented workforce we need in our lifeguard pool. We're also doing something for the second year in a row, is opening up our pools Memorial Day weekend at 4 locations. This is the second time since the 70s that Richmond has been able to open up our facilities to our public, and this will be at Hotchkiss, Randolph, Blackwell, and Fairmont Pool. So if, again, we'll do the shameless plug, we always are in need of lifeguards so that we can make sure we can keep hours open and have our pools safe for all of our individuals. With that, I will now turn over to Ryan Wren to give an update on all of the ARPA funding and where we're at, especially with the new community centers and that process.
Thank you very much. My name is Ryan Wren. I'm the Economic Development Business Services Manager for the Department of Parks and Recreation. And I'm just here to provide a quick update on TB Smith and Lux Field, the 2 new community centers that are being supported by ARPA funding. We held our first community meetings on Saturday, March 1st, and we had a pretty good turnout, but we still need to hear more from the community. So I'm here to get you to write down a website, rva.gov/parks recreation. If you go to our website under the American Rescue Plan tab, there are surveys for community feedback for both of these community centers. And we really need to hear from folks in the 7th and 8th District who live closest to these places so that we can build centers that you like to see. Responses for this first round of surveys will be open until April 14th, and then we will have 2 more upcoming meetings. On April 23rd, which is a Saturday at 10 a.m., we will be at Lux Field. At 2 p.m., we will be at TB Smith. And then on Saturday, June 4th, we will again be at Lux Field at 10 a.m. and at TB Smith at 2 p.m. And there will be another intervening survey in between to look at the actual conceptual designs for these new facilities. Thank you.
And one thing I do just want to stress is the importance of these new facilities. TB Smith right now is a 45-minute bus ride and a 15-minute walk to city services. Lux Field, there's not a bus that gets here. So it's 30 minutes if you need to get services. We want to bring services to the people under the vision of the mayor, and we want to hear what services the individuals want. So it's critical that we hear this kind of information from the community of what they'd like to see so that we can bring what their needs are to them. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Rakia Cooper Wajid to discuss some of the great summer programs that we have going on.
Good afternoon, I'm Rakia Wajid. I'm a division manager for Richmond Parks and Recreation. I want to speak to you a little bit about our summer camps. So our Great Summer Escape Summer Camp registration begins on May 2nd. The camp runs from July 5th through August 1st. August 19th, I'm sorry. There are 2 sessions. It's $200 per session for City of Richmond residents and $225 per session for non-city residents. That's at 4 locations throughout the city. At another 9 locations, we have our free summer pop-up. That program is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is free for all City of Richmond residents. Meals will be served from all children ages 1 through 18, provided by the USDA. I'm going to bring up Priscilla Wright.
Hello, Priscilla Wright, also Recreation Manager here. We also, because I'm short, we also have our Cultural Arts Division. Oh, thank you. Our Pine Camp Summer Impact will be from ages 6 to 12 and operate 3 weeks for 2 sessions. But basically, we want to give everyone the cultural art experience. So we'll also be doing that at Hickory Hill for a summer theater intensive, where we will have a full production by the end of the season for everyone to come and enjoy at the Dell. We will also be doing summer dance intensives at Hickory Hill and at Pine Camp from ages 6 to 17 for city and non-city residents, in addition to a nature film camp, which will be hosted at Pine Camp for ages 11 through 14, where the kids will learn how to create their whole entire movie. So that's another exciting thing we have. And then summer comes, and we will be kicking off the 65th Annual Festival of the Arts. This season is in celebration of families. The season kicks off on June the 17th with the Legacy Band. That will be the opening weekend. It is also our Juneteenth weekend, and we have a lot more updates about that coming. Some of the fan favorites will be returning, like Plunky, KOS, and Mighty Joshua. The City Dance Program will hold their annual recital on the Dell stage for the first time, and this year's musical will be The Addams Family as a nod to the season's dedication. The full schedule will be posted on our social media sites in May. We're also introducing another new thing this summer. It's called Music's in the Parks. Thursdays starting June 23rd through August 25th, you can join us at all 9 districts. We'll have a week. We will have performances from Shades of Grey, Joe the Spy Band, Quiambo, and Weekend Plans. It'll be food trucks, face painting, crafts, and other nuances to make it a family night in your park, in your neighborhood.
And one thing that I did want to highlight, just so that everyone knows, is that we do the federal food programs where we work at feeding, providing breakfast and lunch in the summer to families or to children. And not only Richmond, but also the surrounding counties, we provide that service. We roughly serve 4,000 children a day in that program. So there's lots of kids that we impact, in addition to offering the pop-up programs that Ms. Wajid talked about, and also the summer camp programs, and all the wonderful special events, so that we really can be that department that serves all individuals in our community. So we are happy of all these different offerings, and I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Frelke. Thank you, Ms. Wajid, Ms. Wright, Mr. Wren. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for everyone who works at the Department of Parks and Recreation and Community Facilities. They have been the drivers behind culture in Richmond, but also on our youth engagement. Not only do we have beautiful parks in this city, but we also have great opportunities for engagement for our youth as well. Youth, adults, and seniors. This department does it all, and I want to tip my hat to the hard work they've been putting in for the last few years. And I think you see how much I prioritize the work that they do. If you look at my budget proposal, it's one of the largest increases you've seen in Parks and Recreation in some time. Thank you for your hard work. I now want to jump to the topic that will take the city to the next level. We talked about Parks and Recreation, taking that to the next level. The next topic I want to talk about will take the city to the next level as well. And that topic is relating to accountability and resident engagement. That's the establishment of the Civilian Citizen Review Board, CRB. As you know, I introduced an ordinance to establish a 7-person civilian review board empowered to review Richmond Police Department's internal investigations of the most serious cases in all citizen appeals of RPD internal investigations. The CRB will be independent of the police department and have the right to request subpoenas, which is authorized under state law. They will also be able to hire outside investigators to conduct these investigations. It is important to note this CRB is established under the maximum authority allowed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the maximum authority. Last week, we released a frequently asked questions document, and I want to just take some time today to address a few of the questions that we hear a lot from those in the public and from those in the media. A question that we hear a lot is, first, can the CRB conduct its own investigation if it finds the police department's investigation is lacking? Here's the answer. Yes, the CRB has the power to conduct independent investigations if it deems that the RPD's internal investigations are insufficient. Question 2, can the CRB request subpoenas? There's a lot of talk about this CRB that I proposed did not have subpoena power. Here's your answer. My proposal states that yes, you can request a subpoena from the Richmond Circuit Court. The state law specifically says, and I quote, the CRB may apply to the Circuit Court for the locality for a subpoena compelling the attendance of such witness or the production of such books, papers, and other evidence. And the court may, upon good cause shown, cause the subpoena to be issued, end quote. That is in the Code of the Commonwealth of Virginia, giving subpoena authority to giving the opportunity to request a subpoena to the CRB. All right? Question 3. Why can't the CRB issue its own subpoenas? State law does not allow CRBs to directly issue subpoenas, as I stated just a minute ago. All right? So this CRB has the maximum authority allowed under the Commonwealth of Virginia's laws. Another question that we hear a lot of, will the board be a part of the Richmond Police Department? The answer to that question is no. This is an independent advisory board that will be made up of citizens who are not current or former law enforcement officials and will not be housed at RPD headquarters. It will be supported by a full-time, experienced staff member who is a part of the city's Inspector General's office, not the RPD, the Inspector General's office, which is under the authority of the Richmond City Council. Okay? Now, the police department will provide a liaison who will not be a member of the CRB, which means the person cannot vote or make other decisions on behalf of the CRB, but will help to answer board members' questions and facilitate communication between the board and the RPD. Examples like answer questions about police policy, about procedure, or even jargon. Okay? Question, who can serve on the CRB? Getting a lot of questions about that. Who can serve on the CRB? Richmond residents who are not current or past law enforcement officials, or the family members of officers can serve on the CRB. The board shall reflect the demographic diversity of our great city as required by state law. Board members must also be current residents of the city of Richmond for at least 5 of the last 10 years. That's who can serve on the CRB. Okay? Now, if you have any additional questions about the CRB, we will gladly answer them in our Q&A portion of our briefing today. But that right there is just some of the questions that we've been receiving since the proposal that this administration made a week ago. And so hopefully that answers some of the questions out there for those at home, but also for those here in the media as well. Okay, moving from the CRB to the conversation around school construction. Last week, as some of you may know, hopefully you read it. Some of you may have read the letter that I sent to the City of Richmond's City Council President and Vice President, and to the RPS Board and Vice Chair, outlining the need for us to work together to continue to build schools in a timely fashion that respects our children's right to learn in quality, safe, 21st century buildings. Now, there are several, when I say several, I mean several misconceptions floating around about cost, about time, and about the real need for collaboration. Baffles me. But we're going to dig a little bit deeper and sort of combat some of those misconceptions today. We're going to clear up these misconceptions before tonight's meeting amongst the City Council and the school board, which I want you all to know that I was not invited to. But I have an opportunity to speak to you all today, okay? I'm going to ask the Chief Administrative Officer, Lincoln Saunders, to join me up here so we can have a healthy conversation about our school construction plans in conjunction with Richmond Public Schools, if they're willing. As I stated in my letter last week, our offer from last summer, let me stress, last summer to build schools that RPS designs still stands. Still stands. I understand that the school board wants full control over school design. And I absolutely believe that the way schools are designed should be left to the experts in instruction, meaning Richmond Public Schools. They will have to use these schools each day and every day to educate our kids. And the principals and the teachers and the academic leaders should have the complete creative control over the design of these facilities. I wholeheartedly believe in that. But based on what we know today, if RPS continues to maintain its current position against collaboration and sticking with their current construction method, which is design, bid, build, the school would almost certainly not be completed before March of 2027. And we're talking specifically about George Wythe High School. March of 2027. Now, if the city government, and Richmond Public Schools were to work together and collaborate on George Wythe, utilizing the city's approved construction method, the school could be complete as soon as July or August of 2025. As you recall, we had an earlier timeline a year ago, which was 2024. But since we have not seen any progress since last year, that timeline now, the earliest we could make that facility happen for our children is August of 2025, working together. Additionally, if the city and RPS were to collaborate and work together, Fox Elementary School, the school could be completed by July or August of 2024 compared to January 2026 if RPS sticks with their current process of design, bid, build. Okay? See the difference there, difference in timelines. And all this could happen if we were to work together, like we've done so in the past. I know many parents have asked the question, why does it matter who builds it? Why does that change the amount of time it takes to build a school? And the reason is very simple. While I believe our staff are more than ready and prepared to manage construction, a construction project of this size, the impact of the time of construction is overwhelmingly a product of the construction method that you choose to use. I've mentioned already today, design, bid, build, which has a longer timeline. There are two primary methods approved by the state for school construction. You got design, bid, build, and construction management at risk, CMS at risk. As you can read in any JLARC study out there from a few years back, each has its benefits, its pros and its cons. But when time is a critical factor, and I would say the families at Fox, the families at With, time is a factor, CM at risk is the best option. Why? Because it gets these kids into high quality facilities as quickly as possible. I think they deserve that. And what I hear from those who support the school board and believe that our kids can't wait, well, we agree on that. Our kids can't wait. Now, the major difference between the two methods is that under design, bid, build, you finalize 100% of the design before you go to bid for construction. 100% before you go to construction. When you do CM at risk, you begin the early phases of construction, such as site prep, while you finalize the design. It lets the two processes move concurrently. Now, the city already has a CM at-risk policies in place. We already have these policies in place. We don't have to wait any longer to pass policies, approve policies, do due diligence. We already have it in place. And we could meet the timeline stated, I mentioned earlier, if we simply collaborate and manage construction jointly. What I mean by jointly means working together. What our constituents expect of us. Any person on the street believes that the city and the school board are already working together. And so when we receive pushback on collaboration, it blows the minds of those who live in the communities in Fox or George Wythe. Blows their minds that folks, adults, aren't able to work together. Blows my mind too. But if that is still not palatable, working together is not palatable to the school board, I would implore them to take the additional time to adopt the construction manager at-risk model. If they don't want to work with the city to make these schools a reality, then do your part to adopt this model that will get our kids into a school on a faster timeline. Our kids deserve that. Our kids deserve that. You may have heard comments to the contrary now. but I can assure you that CM at Risk allows greater control over costs, not less, which is especially important considering current challenges posed by inflation, the workforce challenges that we're having, and also the supply chain delays that everyone is experiencing at this moment. These factors matter in the construction of a facility. You just heard from Mr. Random talk about the construction of our community centers. These are all factors that we're taking into consideration as we erect these buildings. And those factors will have to be considered by the school board as well. Now, speaking of those comments, I want to take a step back and correct some misinformation about the city's history working with RPS on building schools. If you go to the Virginia Department of Education website to look at the 2020 to 2021 annual cost report, you'll see data for 9 schools completed in that time period of 2020 to 2021. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's a middle school in Campbell County. Ever been to Campbell County before? Rural county in the western part of the state. And that school costs more per square foot than our new River City Middle School did. Okay? You'll see that the elementary school in New Kent County, to our east off of I-64, costs $311.43 per square foot, while our former Green Elementary School, which is Cardinal now, costs $311.11 per square foot. That's a whopping 1 penny more. 1 penny more. You'll see it, a high school built in Henrico County costs almost $60 per square foot more than our middle school. What you won't see is the comparison, that this comparison is basically worthless. That's what you won't see, because these comparisons are not apples to apples comparisons. High schools on average cost more than middle or elementary schools because they have more expensive spaces like science labs. You see any science labs in middle schools? You see any science labs in elementary schools? You see them in high schools. Or you'll see that the former George Mason, which is Henry Marsh Elementary School, costs more to build in the heart of Church Hill than an elementary school that was built in a suburb. Remember, George Mason, the former George Mason, now Henry Marsh Elementary School, is built in one of the earlier parts of this city. You're not going to find too many places in this whole state as old as the area around Church Hill. Just won't find it. Just won't find it. Now, if I'm building a house, yes, cost is important, but so is quality. So is comfort. I don't trust people who, on one hand, say that our children are our most valuable resource, but on the other hand, cite cost as the reason not to move as quickly as possible to rebuild these schools. I have a hard time trusting people that's speaking at both sides of your neck. It's very counterintuitive. We have to value our kids, and we can do that. This is the both and right here. This is not an either or proposition. We can get our kids into a high quality learning environment as quickly as possible, and we can do it cost effectively. That's not an either or, that's a both and. And government works better when we do the both and not put ourselves in either or boxes. Bottom line. Here's the facts. We built 3 21st century learning environments in 3 years that are serving thousands of children today, in the East End and in South Richmond, Black and brown communities. That occurred because of people working together. When people thought we couldn't do it, we did it. So, We have the same opportunity before us today. I just hope that we have our priorities straight. Because the average Richmonder believes our priorities are obviously out of whack. So before I take questions, I want to conclude this conversation about schools with a question. Who are we building schools for? The answer is simple. We're building these schools for our children who have had to pivot for the last 2 years. None of us here will have experienced what our children have experienced over the course of these last 2 years. No one. Our children who went from learning in the classroom to virtual learning, and some who didn't learn at all because of the lack of access. And now we're saying they should wait till 2027. We're not going to get any medals because of that. No one's going to get a medal because of that. So, we have a proven track record of building faster and building better schools. Why would anyone question that? We must put the petty politics aside and put our children first. That means compromise and collaborate and work together in unity for one cause, the cause of ensuring that our children get the best and they get the most. The best and the most. Unfortunately, we've been a community that have given our children less and less. Now, I think you look at our track record, we're trying to give our children the best and the most. There's no doubt in my mind that the school board and the city council can do that. If they go into this meeting tonight with that being their number one priority. With that, we'll take some questions. There's a lot of questions right there. I don't know if you want to take it one at a time. First question was, do we have evidence of a competitive process during CM at risk? I'll have Mr. Saunders answer that question. The second question was, do we have any evidence that supports design build will take the time, will fit the timeline of August 2027 compared to what we've already presented? I believe we do have evidence of that. And number three, will I return contributions that were received legally through my campaigns after procurement and construction was already completed? As I've said before, whether it's around Confederate monuments as well, my office has nothing to do with procurement in the city of Richmond. We have a whole procurement office that handles that. It's against the law for the chief executive or any politician to be involved in procurement. No one wants to be involved in procurement here. And so at the end of the day, if the contributions were received legally under the state law, we're going to follow the state law. Bottom line. So for all those individuals out there who want to poison the process of building these schools faster by putting out accusations like that that are totally unfounded, shame on you. Shame on you. Now let's get to the real facts of how we build a school.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lincoln Saunders, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Richmond. First of all, I just need to correct the framing of your statement. Construction manager at risk is a competitive procurement process. It is one of the 3 procurement processes authorized by the Commonwealth of Virginia for construction projects. You can go to the JLARC study and review the various comments, and I'll read from them here in a minute. But in the building of the 3 schools during the mayor's last term, CM at Risk was done as a competitive procurement process. We have said that over and over again. The only individuals who are aware of either who had bid or the scoring of those bids were those who were on that panel, including school staff on their facilities management side, as well as the city procurement staff. It is a completely competitive and authorized process under the Commonwealth of Virginia. Furthermore, speaking from that JLARC study that the mayor mentioned earlier, I will pull a quote from Appendix E, page 109. The staff did note that the use of alternative methods, and alternative methods assumes that design, bid, build is the primary method. Just alternative methods, particularly construction manager at risk, was advantageous for especially complex or time-sensitive projects because of the ability to generate a general contractor, to include a general contractor in the initial design, scoping, and scheduling of a project, minimize the risk of future change orders or other problems. There's more I can cite from there. JLARC study does a very good job of going into great depth as to the various guidelines and recommendations for the use of these various construction methods. I would add that if you look at their appendix, here we go, table E2 of their appendix E of the JLARC study, they showed that the average cost for design bid build projects was $5.6 million in the Commonwealth. Design build, which is, again, their process is $10.5 million, and construction manager at risk, average cost was $32.2 million. So you can kind of get a sense of why CM at risk is used for our larger scale projects. They actually recommend you only use it in projects over $10 million in value. George Wythe at last estimates is in the ballpark of $150 million or more today. The other advantage of CM at risk today is you lock in your price early in an area of, and so you lock it in as a max price. And in a era of high inflation, that is incredibly advantageous from a construction process. You asked if we had any evidence. This is a document prepared by those on city staff who are experts in construction. As you know, we do a fair amount of building in the city and construction management. Chris mentioned the work we're doing together to build new community centers. This is a Gantt chart. It's used for project managers, so and certainly understand it's not going to be great for our friends on camera here, but I'm going to just try and describe it for you. This is the design bid build model down below. What you see here is these are the various phases of design that continue, and we would estimate go until October or November of 2023 for George Wythe, given the size and complexity of that high school. You see it ends there, and then you do your bid for construction, and then construction continues through 27. We assume the same level of design with construction manager at risk under the city management, where you would carry that, again, that design through November 23, but you've started construction in February. So it essentially enables you to gain a year or more on the construction process for these complex facilities. Did that address the majority of your questions?
Yeah, just to kind of competitive bid process really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
How many bids have you received for the past 3 schools that were built?
I don't know if I don't have it off the top of my head. Again, it was managed by procurement staff, so I would have to get our procurement director, Freddie Burrell, to tell us what those numbers of bids were. But I do believe we got significant interest in that project, and the team selected those that have both the experience, expertise, and put in the most competitive bid for those constructions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
So, just following up with the question she asked, you're saying that no one wants to be involved with procurement. You just said that, but in this letter you sent last week, it seems that this is sort of the heart of the matter. I heard Kenya Gibson and other school board members saying that they wanted to take over the process because they didn't like CM at risk.
Because of what?
Because they didn't like CM at risk. They thought it led to cost overruns and it was uncompetitive. What you're saying is factually incorrect.
Factually incorrect.
What is then the heart of the matter? If it's not about procurement, and you're saying it's getting the school built sooner, but This was delayed. You're not even talking about Woodville, which was talked about in your first term.
So let me, I got you. So what's the heart of the matter between schools and city government when it comes to the construction of building schools, when it comes to building schools? First, want to remind you that city government and schools have built 3 schools already. Okay? Let's go back, and I think you should go back into the annals of the Richmond Times-Dispatch and look at the stories written by Mark Robinson and Justin Mattingly as well, when they talk about what I did in 2018. In 2018, I went before the public and requested that we raise the mills tax to create $150 million worth of financing to build schools in Richmond. The school board put together a facilities plan that featured 5 schools. Did I have a say on those 5 schools? No. The school board voted to approve a 5-school plan. That 5-school plan exceeded the amount of dollars of the $150 million we had in financing. So the school board had to make some very tough decisions. Do they build Woodfield? Do they build Fairfield? The decision they made was to build a new Green, a new George Mason, and a new Elkhart Thompson. So there were some schools that were on that 5-school list that there was no money for. But they made that tough decision. They wanted us to find the gap between the $150 million to build these 2 new schools. The city council, my administration, could not find the dollars. City council refused to raise further taxes, so we were at $150 million. So it's what can you do with the $150 million? That's what the question was before the school board. It was 3 schools. So when people say, oh, well, Woodville was left off the list, George Wythe was left off the list, it's because the school board decided to build 3 new schools that could fit the $150 million. Really, what the heart of this is? Math. Math. That's what this comes down to. We don't have enough money to do everything that we want to do at one given time. And so hard decisions have to be made. I made the hard decision to ask the people, the patrons at our restaurants, for more money. And they had to make the hard decision to pick what schools they wanted to get built. Now, it's rich to me to come back 3 or 4 years later, after 2018, and say, well, George Wythe didn't get built, or Woodville didn't get built, because we didn't have the money to build them. And we never said we would, because we can't make those decisions. That's why we have to look at the history, right? This is history and math now. All essential topics that should be taught in our schools and should be taught truthfully. Look at the history, look at the math. That's all I ask. And there are some members who are saying things today that were a part of the decisions made when we built and designed those schools together.
Mayor, news of the day about gun violence. In the course of 27 hours, there were 5 shootings. 2 were fatal. The homicide rate for gun violence this year is on track. It matches what it was at this time last year. So, if you can, explain why the homicide rate is the same as it was last year, despite the city spending millions of dollars from ARPA funding and looking for these violence interrupters to help solve the problem. And then I have a question about the civilian review board.
Great question. So Ben just asked that we had a fatal weekend where we lost 2 lives, a number of shootings, over 7, I believe. And why are we seeing the same occurrences of last year occur in 2022? Well, first, just because we declare gun violence a public health crisis, just because we put money into violence interrupters, buyback program, We Matter RVA through DCGS, doesn't mean that we're going to solve the issue of gun violence overnight. We're not going to do that. You look at all these other cities who are experiencing the same thing we're experiencing right now, they're not solving it overnight. And I wish I could go to the parents of a child that was lost to gun violence and say, you know, we had the silver bullet, we have the magic wand, that we're going to solve this overnight. It's not going to be overnight. I said that to you at the end of 2021, and I'm saying to you 3 months later, it's not going to be overnight.
How long do you think it might take?
I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a criminologist. I can't tell you how long it's going to take. But I guess what I can tell you this, what we're doing is the right thing. We're throwing the kitchen sink at this issue, which has been an epidemic for generations. And I want the results as quickly as anyone else in the city does. My heart aches every time we lose a life in the city. But I can't sit here and tell you what you want to hear. What families may want to hear is that tomorrow, next week, next month, next year is all going to be solved. I can't tell you that. I would be dishonest if I told you that. But what I can tell you that we're going to redouble, triple our efforts to make sure we don't lose lives in the city. And you're going to see even more come from, it's a policing issue, but it's also a human services issue as well. We've recognized that. We can't use the same techniques that we used in the 1990s and think we're going to solve this issue. But we can certainly try to diversify our methods and our approaches, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Do you think your plan is working?
I think the proof will be in the pudding a couple years from now, right? We're investing into the root causes of this violence. We've talked about it. It's been reports about it for years. Poverty, a lack of affordable housing, a lack of good access to mental health care, public education. There's a number of social ills that cannot be solved overnight. If we all could solve these ills overnight, this would be a utopia of a city. We're not a utopia. We have to deal with the realities that there are generational ills that haunt us in 2022. And we're going to, like I said, redouble, triple our efforts and throw the entire kitchen sink at this problem.
And I'm going to look at my phone because I'm quoting state code and I don't want to use the wrong verbiage.
Okay.
For my second question.
All right.
That is that state law says that CRBs can make binding disciplinary determinations in cases that involve serious breaches of departmental and professional standards, etc. You say your plan for the CRB allows them to have power at the maximum extent of the law. However, your plan says that CRB can make disciplinary recommendations and give them to the chief, but not that they can make binding disciplinary determinations. So what's the discrepancy here?
Well, the discrepancy, I think, Ben, I was talking about the maximum in terms of subpoena power, because this is what was called for years now, is that these departments be independent, these civilian review boards be independent, and they have subpoena power. They have both. They are independent, they have subpoena power as well. Now, I believe that the proposal that we have on the table before the city council matches the needs for the city of Richmond. As Dr. Pelfrey has pointed out, some of the recommendations that were made in the past to the city council looked at Richmond as if it was a New Orleans, as if it was a Minneapolis, under consent decrees by the Department of Justice. And that's not the case here in Richmond. I believe when you look at the complaint status from the past, the amounts we've received, both internally and externally, the proposal that we have on the table fits the city of Richmond. And it's the only proposal we have on the table.
Would you consider giving them that authority to make those binding disciplinary decisions?
I think that the question was, would I consider giving them those binding decisions? I think the proposal that we have on the table is a good damn proposal.
So no?
I'm willing to have the discussions, but I think the proposal right now that we have fits the city of Richmond. Take one more.
Another CRB question.
This is the longest one we've ever had.
It is. Can you remind us how exactly will the CRB be appointed?
I believe the question was, how will the CRB be appointed? I believe 3 members from the city council, 3 appointments from the office of the mayor, and 1 appointment from the chief of police.
Follow up to that. Say it's independent, but do you feel that it will be fully independent if you've got, you and your chief get a majority to choose the majority of the members?
Well, what if the city council had the majority? Would it be independent then?
Well, 9 members rather than, the executive and, his chief that he appoints.
Well, I've always believed when you look at the alphabet soup of Richmond city government, whether it's RRHA or GRTC, or I can name some more alphabets if you want me to. I could do the whole A through Z if necessary. But the lack of executive appointments is problematic, right? You are here asking me questions about gun violence and all these other issues, and yet the executive gets no appointments? Doesn't seem right to me. What do you think?
I'm not asking you.
Okay, I thought so. Thank you, everyone.